She lived a quiet life that very few people noticed. Every morning, she woke up before the sun, when the streets were still empty and the air felt calm. Her home was small, simple, and filled with little signs of a life built on patience rather than comfort. She worked hard, kept her head down, and never spoke more than needed. People who passed her each day would not remember her face, and that was fine with her. She had learned long ago that silence often felt safer than attention. Music was the one thing she never spoke about. It lived deep inside her, like a secret she protected with care. In the evenings, after long hours of work, she would sit alone and let her fingers move across old keys that had lost their shine. The piano was not expensive or new. Some keys stuck, others sounded softer than they should, but to her, it was perfect. When she played, she forgot the world. There was no judgment, no pressure, no audience, just sound and feeling. Her love for music had started when she was young. Life had not been easy back then, and she learned early how to stay strong without complaining. While others spoke loudly about dreams, she learned to hold hers quietly. Music became her way of breathing when words felt too heavy. She never imagined standing on a stage or being praised. For her, playing was enough. It was something she did for herself, not for claps or approval. On one ordinary day, a notice caught her attention. A public music gathering was being held in the city hall. A famous pianist was scheduled to perform. People talked about him often. They said he was gifted, powerful, and unmatched. They also said he knew it. His name carried weight, and wherever he played, crowds followed. She heard others speaking excitedly about the event, their voices full of admiration. Normally, she would ignore such talk and continue on her way, but that day something felt different. She could not explain it. There was no clear reason, no strong push, just a quiet pull in her chest, telling her to go. She hesitated at first. Places like that were not meant for people like her, she thought. Still, the idea stayed with her through the day, growing slowly, gently, until she decided she would attend. Not to be seen, not to be heard, just to listen. When the evening arrived, she prepared in the same simple way she always did. No special clothes, no careful mirror checks. She wore what felt comfortable and familiar. Before leaving, she rested her hand briefly on her old piano, as if asking it for permission. Then she stepped outside and joined the moving crowd. The hall was larger than she expected. Bright lights filled the space, and people moved with excitement. Conversations echoed off the walls. Some laughed loudly, others spoke with pride about knowing music, technique, and talent. She felt small standing there, like a shadow among voices. She chose a seat near the back, where she could observe without being noticed. From there, the stage looked distant, almost unreal. As time passed, the hall grew fuller. Every seat was taken. The energy in the room felt heavy with expectation. When the pianist finally entered, the reaction was instant. Applause filled the hall before he even reached the piano. He walked with confidence, his posture strong, his expression calm but proud. He did not rush or bow deeply. He stood as if he belonged above everyone else. The woman watched quietly. She noticed how he acknowledged the crowd with a small nod, as though their admiration was expected. He took his seat and adjusted himself slowly, letting the silence stretch. It was clear he enjoyed the attention. Some people leaned forward, eager to witness greatness. Others whispered his name with excitement. He began to play. The sound was strong and fast. His fingers moved with sharp precision, striking the keys without hesitation. The music filled the room quickly, loud and impressive. Many in the audience nodded in approval. Some closed their eyes, clearly impressed by his control and speed. When he finished the first piece, the applause was immediate and loud. He stood, accepted the praise, and smiled slightly. It was the smile of someone who knew he was admired. He returned to the piano and continued, piece after piece, each one demanding attention. The crowd responded every time, clapping harder, cheering louder. But from her seat in the back, the woman listened differently. She could hear the skill, the practice, the years of work behind every note. Yet something felt missing. The music was perfect, but it felt distant, like a beautiful painting behind glass. She felt no anger, no jealousy, just a quiet awareness. She wondered if anyone else felt it too, as the performance continued. The pianist began to speak between pieces. His words were confident, almost playful, but there was an edge to them. He spoke about mastery, discipline, and talent. At one point, he laughed lightly and said that true skill was rare, that not everyone was born to understand music deeply. Some people chuckled. Others clapped in agreement. The woman lowered her gaze. She was used to such words. She had heard them in different forms all her life. Words that placed people above others. Words that created distance instead of connection. Still, she remained calm. She did not judge him. She simply listened. The pianist finished another piece and stood again, soaking in the applause. His confidence seemed to grow with every clap. He looked around the hall, as if measuring the room. His eyes passed over faces quickly, never resting for long. He did not see the woman sitting quietly in the back. At that moment, a strange silence followed the applause. It was brief but noticeable. The pianist smiled and made a comment about how performances like this reminded everyone who truly belonged on stage. The words were not directly aimed at anyone, yet they carried weight. A few people shifted in their seats. Others laughed, unsure how to react. The woman felt her heart beat a little faster. Not from fear, but from something she had not felt in a long time. A memory. A reminder of why music mattered to her in the first place. Not to prove anything, not to compete, but to speak when words failed. She took a slow breath and stayed seated. She had no plan, no intention beyond listening. Whatever happened next was not in her control, and she accepted that. The hall buzzed again with conversation as the pianist prepared to continue. She did not know yet that this quiet evening, which had started like any other, was slowly moving toward a moment that would change how everyone in that room understood talent. Humility and respect. For now, she remained where she was, silent, observing, waiting, and the music continued. The pianist's fingers moved across the keys like lightning, each note sharp, clear, and precise. The sound was perfect, fast, and confident. He played pieces that showed the world his skill, pieces that had been honed over countless hours of practice. Every person in the audience could see the dedication, the years behind his talent. Yet even as he performed brilliantly, there was something missing. The music, though technically flawless, felt distant. It reached the ears, but did not touch the heart. The audience, however, was captivated. Applause followed each piece, and murmurs of admiration spread throughout the hall. Many leaned forward, unable to stop themselves from being impressed. There was a sort of awe, a recognition of mastery, and yet there was also a faint undercurrent of tension. Not everyone felt the connection the pianist sought to inspire. Some people nodded and smiled politely, recognizing skill, but craving something more. The woman in the back noticed the subtle difference. She could feel it. Music was meant to communicate, to touch, to linger, and she felt that while the pianist played beautifully, something essential was missing. He moved to the next piece with a self-assured smile, acknowledging the applause as if it were owed to him. He began speaking between pieces now, his voice carrying through the hall, calm but confident. True mastery, he said, is rare. Not everyone is born with the ability to truly understand music. Some can play, some can follow, but few can feel it the way it should be felt. A few people in the audience laughed lightly, nodding in agreement. Others looked thoughtful, unsure how to respond. The woman in the back lowered her gaze. She had heard words like this before. People who spoke proudly of their skill without considering what it meant to connect with others. Words that separated rather than included. She didn't feel anger, just a quiet sense of observation. She had learned long ago that humility often speaks louder than arrogance. As the pianist continued, his energy seemed to grow. He played faster, harder, as if daring the audience to match his technical brilliance. The room filled with rapid, powerful notes. Every strike of the keys was measured, confident, and commanding. It was impossible to ignore his ability. He was in control, and he wanted the world to notice. Yet beneath all that control, the woman felt a subtle emptiness in the music. It was skill without vulnerability, technique without soul. She sensed that some people in the audience noticed it too, the ones who had experienced music not just as sound, but as feeling. During a brief pause, he turned to the audience with a small smirk. "Not everyone here could play like this," he said lightly. "Some might try, but most will fail. It takes more than practice to achieve this level. It takes talent." The words hung in the air, and the crowd responded with polite laughter. Few realized how sharply the words cut. Some felt admiration, others discomfort. It was an invisible line drawn between those on the stage of talent and those in the audience, spectators rather than participants. The woman in the back remained silent. She felt no need to respond. She didn't seek validation. Her music was hers, and that truth gave her strength. He played another piece, complex arrangement with dramatic crescendos and rapid trills. The sound was overwhelming, filling every corner of the hall. People clapped after the performance. Some whistled, others cheered. The pianist accepted the attention, basking in the applause, as if it were his rightful crown. His posture, his movements, even the way he nodded to the crowd radiated certainty. He was convinced no one could match him, and for now, the audience seemed to agree. Yet amidst all the praise, the woman noticed subtle reactions. A few people glanced around, their expressions unreadable. Some shifted uncomfortably, sensing the difference between skill that impresses and music that touches. The woman felt a pang of something she hadn't felt in years: anticipation. Not for herself, but for what could happen if the music truly connected. She knew it was possible. She had felt it in her own playing countless times, in moments of quiet solitude. Music could speak where words could not, could reach hearts where intellect or pride could not. The pianist continued, playing piece after piece with growing confidence. Each time he finished, the applause seemed louder, and he smiled brighter. It was a performance built on precision and control, and the audience admired it. Yet the woman noticed the pauses, the spaces between notes where the music could breathe, the moments where connection could have been, but wasn't. In those silent intervals, she felt a longing in the room, a quiet hunger for something deeper. The pianist seemed unaware, focused entirely on technique and recognition. Finally, he paused, resting his hands on the keys, eyes scanning the room with a satisfied expression. "Music," he said, "is a language. Some speak it fluently, others only pretend. Tonight, you've heard someone who speaks it well." He allowed a small laugh, a subtle show of confidence that drew even more attention. Some people clapped again, affirming his words, while others shifted. Sensing the weight behind them, the woman remained seated, silent, observing. She had never sought recognition. That was not why she played. She played because music had been her companion in quiet moments, her solace in difficulty, her expression when words failed. She understood it differently. She knew that true mastery was not measured by speed or applause, but by the ability to communicate, to move hearts, and to leave an invisible trace in the minds of listeners. And she knew that this moment might be one of the rare opportunities to show what she understood. Her fingers twitched slightly in her lap, a reflex from years of practice and quiet dreaming. She had always played alone, imagining audiences in her mind, but never performing for them. Yet the piano in that hall called to her, a distant echo of the one she played daily. She had no plan. She was not thinking about fame or attention. All she felt was a gentle pull, a sense that it was time to let the music speak. The pianist, unaware of the woman's thoughts, prepared to play another complex piece. He adjusted his posture, cracked his fingers, and let the first notes rise. The audience leaned forward in expectation. The woman watched carefully, noticing every detail of his performance. She could see the control, the pride, and the intensity. She also noticed the lack of vulnerability, the absence of softness that could allow music to resonate deeply as he played. She remembered the countless hours she had spent at home, practicing not to impress, but to explore the depth of sound. She remembered how each note could carry emotion, each chord could tell a story. She understood how to play not just with fingers, but with intention, with feeling that transcended technical skill. And in that moment, a thought began to form, quiet and hesitant, yet persistent. She could try. She could play. She could let the music speak. No one noticed her at first. She was a shadow in the back, unnoticed and underestimated. The pianist's eyes never strayed to her, confident that no challenge awaited. The audience, caught up in admiration, did not suspect what was about to happen. She moved slowly, deliberately, feeling the floor beneath her feet as she walked toward the piano. Every step was measured, calm, and unhurried. She did not speak. She did not announce her intentions. She simply approached, letting the quiet courage inside her guide her. When she reached the piano, she paused briefly, placing her hands lightly on the keys. The instrument felt familiar, yet different in this new environment. She did not rush. She did not seek to impress. She closed her eyes for a moment, drawing a deep breath, letting the room fall silent. The pianist paused mid-piece, noticing movement in the back. He frowned slightly, curious but still confident. Surely this was nothing serious, he thought. No one could compete. The audience murmured, sensing something unusual. A woman, quiet and modest, stood by the piano. Some whispered to each other, unsure if this was a joke or an accident. A few laughed softly, assuming she would step aside. No one expected what would come next. She seated herself calmly, her posture unassuming, her expression serene. She did not speak. She did not announce her presence. She simply began to play, and from the first note, the room changed. The music was gentle, flowing, alive. Every note carried feeling, every chord spoke a story. The audience froze, caught in a wave of sound that felt both familiar and new. The pianist stopped completely, stunned, his fingers hovering above the keys, unsure what to do. He had never experienced anything like this. This was not about speed, precision, or technical mastery. This was music that breathed, music that moved.
Wow, music that touched the soul.
The woman played without hesitation, without thought of applause. She played for the music itself, and the audience could feel it. Silence filled the room, not empty, but alive with attention. Hearts and minds leaned forward, captivated by the unexpected beauty. The pianist watched, unable to move as the music unfolded. His own performance, brilliant as it had been, suddenly felt distant, mechanical. This was real. This was connection. And it was coming from someone he had underestimated completely. By the time she finished, the hall erupted, not in polite applause, but in deep, genuine appreciation. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, some with tears in their eyes. The pianist, still seated, stared in disbelief. His smirk was gone, his confidence shaken. For the first time, he listened without judgment, without pride. He realized what he had overlooked. True mastery is not only in skill, but in the ability to touch hearts. The woman smiled softly, quietly acknowledging the response, but she did not linger. She had shown what she needed to show. Music, for her, had spoken where words could not, and in doing so, she had created a moment that would not be forgotten. The hall had witnessed the quiet power of humility, the unexpected strength of someone who had always stayed in the shadows, and the profound truth that talent is nothing without heart. The room was still buzzing from the pianist's performance, a mixture of admiration, excitement, and subtle unease. People were still talking about his skill, replaying the speed and precision of his fingers in their minds. But the whispers of doubt, of curiosity had begun. The woman had returned to her seat after her own brief encounter at the piano, but no one had really noticed. She had moved with grace, unassuming, leaving behind a quiet ripple rather than a wave. The pianist, now off the stage, had been approached by a few admirers, each praising his skill and confidence. He smiled and nodded, accepting compliments with the poise of someone used to admiration. He had never considered anyone else capable of matching him, let alone surpassing his show of technique and control. His mind was filled with certainty, the kind that comes from years of experience and the echo of constant approval. Yet, as he glanced toward the back of the room, he noticed the faint movement of someone he hadn't recognized before. It was the woman, quiet, still composed, her gaze calm and steady. Something about her presence unsettled him slightly, though he could not yet define why. A few minutes passed, and the event moved toward a lighter moment. The host, sensing the energy in the room, made a casual remark. "We've seen a demonstration of true skill tonight," he said. "But sometimes, music surprises us when we least expect it. Anyone here who would like to share their talent is welcome." The words hung in the air, light, casual, yet loaded with potential. The pianist chuckled softly under his breath. He did not even consider that anyone in that room might step forward. Who could match him? Who could even approach his level? To him, the challenge was meaningless, more a polite gesture than an actual invitation. The audience smiled, some nervous, some intrigued. Few dared imagine that someone could rise from their seats and change the atmosphere entirely. The woman shifted slightly, a small movement, almost unnoticed. Her fingers brushed against the edge of her seat. She had never sought attention, never raised her hand or asked for the spotlight. Yet now, a quiet thought pushed through the usual barriers of her caution. Could she play? Could she let the music tell its story in a space filled with expectation and pride? She had no intention of showing off. She did not want applause. She wanted only to play, to let the sound speak. Her mind moved carefully, step by step. She weighed the possibilities. The crowd, the stage, the piano, the pianist himself. All of it seemed vast, intimidating, yet strangely compelling. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from a deep, familiar excitement. This was a moment she had imagined many times in her solitude, yet she had never allowed it to approach reality. The impulse grew quietly, steadily, until she realized there was only one path forward. She would rise, she would approach, she would let the music speak. When she moved, it was slow, deliberate, and measured. She stood from her seat, her posture calm, unassuming, yet full of quiet purpose. Conversations began to soften as people noticed her movement. Some whispered to each other, unsure what was happening. A few laughed, thinking it a light-hearted interruption. The pianist, still basking in attention, looked up with mild curiosity. His smirk appeared at first, confident that this would be an amusing spectacle. He did not take her seriously. Who could? He thought. She walked down the aisle with calm steps. Her eyes were not fixed on the crowd or the stage, but on the piano ahead. Every step felt familiar, as if she had walked this path countless times before. There was no hesitation, no sign of fear or doubt. She carried only a quiet determination, a simple resolve to do what felt right. The audience leaned forward, sensing the unusual tension, the sudden curiosity of what might happen next. As she approached the piano, the pianist finally noticed fully, his eyes widening slightly. The confident smirk faltered, replaced by curiosity, then a flicker of uncertainty. This woman, quiet, modest, seemingly ordinary, dared to approach the instrument as if she belonged there. The thought had never occurred to him that anyone in that room could challenge or even compliment his display of skill. His fingers paused, hovering above the keys. Almost instinctively, she reached the piano and settled herself on the bench. Her posture was relaxed, not demanding attention, not asserting dominance. The pianist watched, a mixture of disbelief and intrigue forming in his expression. The audience quieted, sensing the anticipation, feeling a shift in the energy of the room. The whispers ceased as all eyes turned toward the piano, toward this unexpected figure. The woman's fingers hovered over the keys, lightly brushing them as if greeting an old friend. The pianist, still standing, took a step back, unsure whether to intervene or observe. There was a calm confidence about her, unlike anything he had encountered before. She did not speak. She did not look around. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, taking a slow, deep breath. The room seemed to hold its own breath along with her. Then she began to play. The first note was soft, gentle, almost like a whisper. It held a resonance that reached out, not demanding attention, but inviting it. The second note followed, delicate yet deliberate, creating a rhythm that was both flowing and purposeful. The pianist, accustomed to fast, precise, technically demanding passages, found himself unprepared. The sound was not about speed or power, it was about feeling. It moved through the room like water, filling every space with a warmth that seemed to touch each listener individually. People leaned forward, captivated. Notes carried emotion in a way the audience had not expected. There was vulnerability in the music, a story being told without words, a message that did not seek applause but connection. Some closed their eyes, letting the sound wash over them. Others were silent, caught in a moment of profound attention. The pianist, stunned, could do nothing but watch. He had never played in a space where silence could be so heavy, where music could command respect without force. The piece grew in depth, each note carefully placed, each chord resonating with sincerity. The woman's fingers moved with a natural grace, as though the piano had become an extension of herself. Her performance was not about technique alone, it was about communication, storytelling, and emotion. Every person in the room felt it differently, yet no one could deny the truth in the music. The pianist's fingers twitched, almost unconsciously, as he tried to recall what he had played moments before. It was precise, correct, admired, but it did not reach the hearts of those listening in the same way. He realized for the first time that skill without connection was incomplete. His performance had dazzled, impressed, and entertained. But it had not moved the soul the way this woman's music was doing. She continued to play, unaware of the shifting dynamics in the room. Her eyes remained closed, her mind focused entirely on the sound and the emotion it carried. The audience was silent, rapt, leaning into every chord. Some people felt tears form as the music spoke to their own memories, their own struggles, their own quiet joys and sorrows. The power of what she created was undeniable, was not meant to challenge, not meant to show superiority, but the effect was transformative. The pianist moved closer, drawn in by curiosity and disbelief. He observed the way her fingers danced across the keys, how every note seemed deliberate yet free. The control was there, but it was hidden beneath layers of expression and heart. He realized that he had never truly understood this level of artistry. He had thought mastery was about speed and complexity. He had thought applause was the measure of greatness. Now he saw that the essence of music was far deeper, far more intimate. As the final notes faded, there was a pause, a collective exhale that seemed to fill the room. No one spoke immediately. There was only the sound of breath, the faint echo of the last chord lingering in the air. And slowly, softly, the audience began to applaud. At first, a few hands clapped tentatively, then others joined, until the room was filled with a wave of genuine appreciation. Some rose to their feet, moved not by performance alone, but by the authenticity, the honesty, and the unexpected depth they had witnessed. The pianist stood frozen, stunned, unable to respond immediately. He had expected admiration, applause, recognition, but nothing had prepared him for this. He had never faced someone who could silence a room not with power, but with sincerity. He realized that his own performance, while technically brilliant, had been hollow in comparison. The lesson was clear. True mastery is not measured by speed or skill alone, but by the ability to connect, to communicate, and to move hearts. The woman, still seated at the piano, smiled softly.
Oh.
She acknowledged the applause, but did not seek it. Her performance had been enough. She had spoken through her music, and that alone mattered. She did not linger. She had made her point, created her impact, and now it was time to step back into the quiet she had always cherished. The audience, captivated and deeply moved, would remember this moment long after the applause faded, and so the room, once filled with confident expectation and polite admiration, had transformed, now held the quiet power of humility, the reminder that true strength is often unseen until revealed in the right moment, and that genuine talent does not boast, it resonates. The room was transformed. The audience, still processing the unexpected brilliance they had just witnessed, sat in a mixture of awe and wonder. The pianist, who had once commanded attention effortlessly, now looked on with a new, uneasy awareness. The quiet woman had not just played, but she had reached into the hearts of everyone present. And though she had stepped back to her seat, her presence lingered like a soft echo, a reminder that music was more than skill, it was feeling, connection, and truth. People whispered to one another, sharing glances of disbelief. Some were trying to put words to what they had experienced, but the language seemed inadequate. How could one describe a performance that touched so deeply without a single word being spoken? The applause had been generous and genuine, yet it was not about spectacle. It was about recognition, not of grandeur, but of authenticity. There was a lesson woven into every note, a story carried by each chord, and it was understood even by those who had never thought of music in such a personal way. The pianist, for the first time, allowed himself to feel something he had rarely experienced: humility. He had built his reputation on precision, control, and confidence, yet all those attributes now felt incomplete. He had always believed that applause equaled mastery, that speed and technique were the truest measures of talent. Watching the woman, he realized how limited that perspective had been. She did not play to impress or dominate. She played to express, to connect, to touch the invisible threads of emotion that bind human hearts. He sat silently for a moment, reflecting. Every technical skill he had honed over years of practice now seemed like only half the picture. The woman had revealed the other half. The music that spoke without intention, that moved without artifice, was raw, gentle, yet undeniably powerful. He could feel it in the subtle reactions of the crowd, the slow breaths, the tears held back, the eyes wide in recognition of something rare and true. Meanwhile, the woman remained composed, her calm demeanor contrasting the storm of emotions in the room. She had no desire for accolades or praise, but she could sense the impact of her music. The beauty of this moment was not in the applause or recognition, but in the shared human experience that had been created. It was a silent conversation, one that transcended language, culture, and expectation. She felt a quiet satisfaction, not from victory, but from fulfillment, the kind that comes from doing what feels right in the deepest part of oneself. The audience slowly began to settle. People sat back, still in awe, processing what they had witnessed. Some reached for their phones to record or share, though many felt recording could never capture the essence. Others simply sat, letting the experience sink in. Every face showed a mixture of admiration, surprise, and a newfound respect for something beyond mere technical ability. The room was alive with a shared understanding, a subtle shift in perception that would linger long after the event ended. The pianist, now standing, approached the stage slowly. His usual confidence was tempered by genuine curiosity and respect. He could not ignore what he had just witnessed. Every instinct that had once told him to dominate or showcase his skill now told him to listen, to observe, and perhaps to learn. He cleared his throat and addressed the audience. His voice different from before, less arrogance, more reflection. "Tonight," he began, "I have witnessed something remarkable. It is a reminder that music is not just notes or technique. It is emotion, it is connection, it is the story behind the sound. What we heard just now was a performance that went beyond skill. It touched hearts in a way I have rarely experienced, and I hope you all recognize the beauty in that truth." The room responded with a quiet, almost reverent applause. This was not about recognition for him, nor for her. It was about acknowledgement of the profound impact of genuine expression. People felt a subtle shift in how they understood music, talent, and humility. The applause was soft, sustained, and filled with gratitude. The woman, still seated, watched as the pianist returned to his seat. There was no resentment, no envy. She understood that this moment had taught him something essential, just as it had taught the audience. Music, she thought, was a teacher. Sometimes it was gentle, sometimes it was forceful, but it always revealed truth when approached with sincerity. She had shared her story. Now others were beginning to hear it. She thought back to her own journey, the quiet hours spent at her piano, the small room where she had poured her emotions into each note, the patience required to understand the delicate balance between sound and feeling. She realized how far she had come, not in terms of recognition, but in mastery of her own heart and mind. Music had always been her companion, her confidant, and her solace. Tonight, it had become a bridge to the wider world. Conversations began to stir among the audience again. But they were different now. They spoke not of competition, skill, or who was better. Instead, they discussed emotion, expression, and the unique power of music to reach beyond technique. People were inspired, quietly reflecting on their own experiences, both with music and with the subtle art of listening. The woman's performance had created a ripple effect. Touching more than just the ears, it had awakened the heart. The pianist observed, listening carefully. He had performed countless times, receiving applause and recognition, yet tonight he felt a shift within himself. There was an understanding that had not been there before. He realized that his own achievements, while commendable, were incomplete without the emotional depth that the woman had demonstrated. It was a humbling moment, but one filled with potential growth. It's a chance to learn and expand his perspective. The woman, sensing the shift, allowed herself a small smile. She did not need to dominate or prove herself. Her music had done what words could not. It had connected, had moved, and had left an impression that would be remembered. She had stepped into the light for just a moment, enough to share her voice, and then stepped back, preserving the quiet strength that had always defined her. The atmosphere in the room remained charged with respect and reflection. People lingered, reluctant to leave, unwilling to let the impact of the moment fade. They had witnessed a demonstration not of competition, but of authenticity. The woman had shown that true talent does not demand recognition, does not need to boast, and yet it has the power to influence profoundly. The lesson was clear, and it resonated deeply with everyone present. The pianist, now fully composed, approached the woman quietly. There was no fanfare, no grand gestures, only a genuine acknowledgement of what she had achieved. He nodded, a small gesture carrying immense weight. It was an unspoken agreement, a recognition of talent that transcended ego and expectation. For him, it was a turning point, a reminder that even the most skilled can learn from humility, sincerity, and quiet strength. The woman looked back at him briefly, returning the nod with the same calm assurance. She had no desire to assert dominance or claim victory. Her music had spoken for her, and that was enough. The connection had been made, and the room had been transformed. What mattered was the shared experience, the understanding that true greatness often reveals itself quietly, through depth, sincerity, and heart. As the evening drew to a close, people left with a sense of wonder, reflecting on the unexpected lessons they had received. They had witnessed the power of quiet courage, the beauty of authentic expression, and the undeniable strength of humility. The pianist carried with him a new perspective, one that would influence his future performances, teaching him that true skill is measured not only by technique, but by the ability to reach others in meaningful ways. The woman, now walking home through the quiet streets, felt a calm satisfaction. She had shared her voice, touched hearts, and remained true to herself. The applause, admiration, and recognition were secondary. What mattered was the experience, the connection, and the reminder that genuine talent and humility can resonate far beyond expectation. The night had changed not just the audience, but her as well. Reinforcing the quiet truth she had always known, music is a language of the heart, and when spoken sincerely, it cannot be ignored or forgotten. The room had quieted. Yet the energy of what had transpired lingered like a gentle vibration. The applause had faded, but its echoes remained in the hearts of the audience. People spoke in hushed tones, not wanting to disturb the gravity of what they had experienced. Each person seemed to carry a personal understanding, a private reflection on the lesson offered in those brief, unexpected moments of music. The woman, seated quietly, remained composed. Her calm demeanor, a stark contrast to the subtle chaos of emotions surrounding her. She had never sought this attention, yet she had become the center of a profound moment that would remain etched in the minds of all. Who had witnessed it, the pianist, still absorbing the experience, approached the piano once more. Though this time his approach was different. There was no arrogance in his step, no show of confidence intended to dazzle, Instead, there was a cautious curiosity, an openness that had rarely accompanied him in previous performances. He watched the woman with careful attention, trying to understand not only her technique, but the way her music had managed to reach the audience so deeply. He recognized that this was not about competition. It was about connection, emotion, and the power of authenticity. He raised his hands above the keys, paused, and allowed silence to fill the space. The audience, sensing the rare humility, held their breath. The woman, observing quietly, remained still. Knowing that the moment was no longer about herself, but about the shared experience of music and understanding, she felt a quiet satisfaction in seeing the pianist absorb the lesson so fully. This was what music could do: teach without words, touch without demanding attention, and reveal truth without expectation. Slowly, the pianist began to play again, this time with a different energy. His fingers moved more thoughtfully, each note deliberate, each chord infused with care rather than force. The speed and complexity that had once defined his performances gave way to a gentler, more expressive style. He played not to impress, but to communicate, to connect, to explore the space that the woman had opened for him and the audience. The shift was subtle, yet profound. Listeners leaned forward, captivated by the transformation. They were witnessing not just technical skill, but the emergence of understanding and humility, a rare combination that spoke louder than any applause could. The woman listened intently, appreciating the change. She had no desire to overshadow or dominate. Her purpose had been to reveal that there is more to music than technique, and the pianist had begun to understand. She felt a sense of quiet joy, knowing that the moment had expanded beyond her own expression. Music had done its work, connecting hearts, teaching lessons, and leaving an impact that would ripple far beyond the hall. As the piece continued, the audience was deeply engaged. Some closed their eyes, feeling the emotion in the music resonate with their own experiences. Others leaned forward, captivated by the subtle changes, the sincerity now present in every note. There was a sense of shared understanding, a recognition that music at its best speaks directly to the heart and transcends words, expectations, and ego. When the pianist finished, there was a brief pause, followed by a wave of applause that was both respectful and heartfelt. This time, it was not about spectacle or superiority. It was about genuine appreciation for the depth of expression and the courage to explore vulnerability. The audience stood in unison, not in celebration of the fastest or the most precise, but in recognition of the transformative power of music and the humility it had revealed. The woman, sensing that the lesson had been absorbed, slowly stood and approached the piano once more. This time, she did not play to challenge, impress, or dominate. She played softly, simply allowing the music to breathe and flow, reinforcing the connection that had been created. Her performance was gentle, understated, yet profoundly moving. Each note was deliberate, carrying emotion and intention, reminding the audience that true mastery lies not in the complexity of technique, but in the ability to convey honesty and feeling. The pianist observed in silence. Learning from every movement, every note, he realized that his previous understanding of mastery had been incomplete, limited by ego and the pursuit of external validation. The woman's music had reminded him of the true purpose of art: to communicate, to heal, to connect. He felt a sense of gratitude, recognizing that the moment had not diminished him, but had expanded his understanding, deepened his appreciation, and inspired him to evolve. The audience, captivated, felt a profound shift. Their attention was not merely on performance, but on the deeper truth revealed through sincerity and humility. Conversations after the event would no longer be about who played faster or more skillfully, but about the emotional depth, the courage to be authentic, and the power of music to touch lives. The woman's presence and her music had left a lasting imprint, demonstrating that true greatness often lies in subtlety, in quiet strength, and in the willingness to connect with honesty. As the event drew to a close, the room emptied gradually, each person carrying the lesson in their heart. The pianist remained for a moment, reflecting on what had transpired. He approached the woman quietly, offering a nod of sincere acknowledgement. There were no words needed. The mutual respect and understanding were evident in that simple gesture. He had learned something invaluable, that true talent is inseparable from humility. And that genuine expression transcends recognition or applause. The woman smiled softly, acknowledging his gesture with the same calm assurance that had defined her presence throughout the evening. She had played, she had shared, and she had left a profound impact without seeking to dominate, impress, or prove herself. Her journey was one of quiet strength, of dedication to her craft, and of a deep understanding of what music could convey. Tonight, her message had been received, understood, and respected. Walking home through the quiet streets, she reflected on the evening. The experience reinforced the lessons she had always known, that music is a language of the heart, that authenticity carries more weight than skill alone, and that humility can amplify the impact of talent. She felt contentment, not in recognition, but in the knowledge that she had stayed true to herself and her values, and in doing so, had touched the lives of those around her. The pianist, too, carried the lessons forward. He understood that mastery is not complete without empathy and connection, that technical skill must be balanced with emotional depth, and that humility can elevate talent in ways pride never could. He left the hall with a new perspective, inspired to refine not only his technique, but also his approach, his understanding, and his connection to the music and the audience. The audience would remember this evening for years to come. They had witnessed an unexpected demonstration of talent, humility, and sincerity. They had experienced the quiet power of music that spoke to the heart, that revealed truth without words, and that transformed perception. The woman's presence, her courage, and her authenticity had left an indelible mark, reminding everyone that greatness often comes quietly, unexpectedly, and with a gentle, undeniable force.